Good morning, everybody. It is great to see you on this beautiful Sunday morning. I encourage you to continue to share your greetings and your thoughts, your questions, your comments in the chat through this whole time. This online platform makes it easy for us to communicate with each other and for you to communicate with me. I'll try to address your comments or questions when you post them, but if I can't, then let's talk later, okay? Please pray with me. Gracious God, be a part of all of this. In Jesus' name, amen. First of all, I want to be sure that you know that this coming week, starting this Tuesday and it's actually starting tomorrow, but this Tuesday and this Friday, the food giveaways will be closed because we are ripping up some carpet. Yay! Because carpet's really, really hard to keep clean when you give away food. And it's very hard to keep on the floor when you move big, heavy pallets across it. So we are so thankful to have received some grants to help with the funding of this project. So we're taking the carpet up and we're putting down cement. But I want to be sure you know that we will not be open for food giveaways this Tuesday and this Friday. If you look online at our Facebook page, and it'll be on our website this afternoon, there'll be a posting that shares a lot of other options in our area for food this week. Otherwise, if you want to come help today at 1 o'clock, we'll be moving all the stuff that's on all the spaces where the carpet's coming up. And that's this afternoon at 1 o'clock. So show up. We got a lot to do. Or this next Saturday, we need a lot of help putting it all back. That's next Saturday at 9 a.m. If you want to be involved, please do let me know. Wanted to be sure you knew that. I think most of you, if you know me at all or you've heard me speak, you would know that my favorite time of year is most likely spring, partially because I'm just so thankful to be done with this crazy winter thing that we do in Minnesota here. But spring is so beautiful to me. Like when the green comes up, it is so green. It's just the most vibrant, beautiful time of the year. I love every part of it. I love the birds migrating in, and the older I get, the more I watch them and keep track of them and learn them. By the way, the Merlin app is awesome for that. But this regeneration, this regrowth, this coming back up from the ground, it's just a beautiful theme in our earth. And it's also a huge theme in the Bible and in the way God operates with us in this world. I don't know if you've seen this yet, but this is the back of the church. Yeah, I know it looks messy. Don't look at the mess. Look at the garlic. Do you see this? That stuff is all garlic. And I don't even know how many garlic cloves that Joe Nelson planted in order for all this garlic to grow, but I heard him just gushing over it. Did you see all the garlic? And there's multiple varieties of it. So this all just came up in the back of the church, and our community gardens are getting ready for this incredible season where we actually are able to grow food on site that we offer to people on Tuesdays and Fridays. It's just one of the best things we do. We're also able to grow food with our early learning center kids so they have a chance to get their hands dirty, literally grow food that they then get to eat. It's just, I love this time of year, and I believe you probably do too. Spring is incredibly beautiful. And through all this time, every time spring comes, I think about a particular Bible story that is one of my favorites that I do preach on a fairly regular basis. But this time, this year, I had some different insights that I want to share with you today regarding this story of when Jesus feeds the 5,000. I've talked about this at length in a lot of ways. I won't recap everything we've talked about over the 8 years I've been here regarding this passage. But let's talk about it from a little bit different perspective today, okay? First of all, it's important to note that this story shows up in all four Gospels. And you can see that I listed them in the order that they were written by time and not in the order that they show up in the Bible context itself. Thank you, Michael. That's how you can see all four versions. If you click on that link, it'll bring another page open in front of you that'll show you all four of these accounts of these stories. I think in that, though, I have Matthew first because that's how Bible Gateway likes it. Hi, Roxy. And hi, Myrna. Anyway, this is how it shows up. And Mark was the first gospel written before Matthew and Luke, and then John was a lot later, like in 90. And it's interesting to me that in the first three versions of this story, it's almost exactly the same. But then the Gospel of John, written probably 20 years after Luke or Matthew, which is quite a long time, like in 90, which would have been 60 years after Jesus, okay, that's a long time, the story changes. And I think it's important and I think it's interesting. You ready? If you don't find it interesting, I'm sorry, but I think it's cool. We're going to read the version from Mark's gospel today to begin. This is Mark chapter 6. If you know the story of the feeding of the 5,000, you might know an amalgamation of the four stories. So listen for what you don't hear in the Mark version. The apostles gathered around Jesus and told him all that they had done and taught. He said to them, "Come away to a deserted place all by yourselves and rest a while." Isn't it great that Jesus actually calls us to and gives us permission to rest? For many were coming and going, and they had no leisure even to eat. And they went away in the boat to a deserted place by themselves. Now many saw them going and recognized them, and they hurried there on foot from all the towns and arrived ahead of them. As he went ashore, he saw a great crowd, and he had compassion for them. Do you hear that word? Compassion. That really matters today, okay? It matters every day, but in what we're talking about today, that matters. In fact, there was something that happened on Friday night that I'm going to talk about, that word, compassion. Because they were like sheep without a shepherd, and he began to teach them many things. Instead of going away, they stopped to deal with this. When it grew late, his disciples came to him and said, "This is a deserted place, and the hour is now very late. Send them away so that they may go into the surrounding country and villages and buy something to eat for themselves." But he answered them, "You give them something to eat." You hear that? Jesus said to his disciples, "You feed them." And they said to him, "Are we to go to buy 200 denarii worth of bread and give it to them to eat?" And he said to them, "How many loaves have you? Go and see." When they found out, they said, 5 and 2 fish. And then he ordered them to get all the people to sit down in groups in the green grass. Do you hear what's missing? There's a story in John of a boy that shared his lunch. That's not in Mark, Matthew, and Luke. Okay, it matters. So they sat down in groups of hundreds and of 50s. Do you see this? They broke them into small groups. Taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, he looked up to heaven. This is Jesus. He blessed and broke the loaves. Do you hear the correlation? And he gave them to his disciples to set before the people, and he divided the 2 fish among them all. 12 little chunks, I guess. And all ate and were filled. And they took up 12 baskets full of broken pieces and of the fish. Those who had eaten the loaves numbered 5,000 men. And that likely also included women and children, which would have made the number gigantic. First, you have to see the symbolism here, this beautiful image of Jesus breaking the bread. This is the same thing we see at the Last Supper. Hi, Lisa, which is something we talked about a few weeks ago, maybe even last week. Jesus breaks the bread. The symbolism is beautiful. Although it is small, the bread is small, just as Jesus himself and his body is small, just as anything we have and everything that we are is small. It can be distributed, but it's got to be broken first. Do you see this? That's a beautiful picture. But I want to look at some comparisons between the three. Sorry about that. Between the three here. I had to make myself tiny so that we could look at this better on the slides, okay? Mark, Matthew, and Luke contain some things that John's doesn't. They're different. Let's look at this. First of all, in the first 3 Gospels, the disciples notice that the people need food. In John's Gospel, it's Jesus who notices that the people need food. That's important, okay? In the first 3, Jesus tells the disciples to feed the people, and they worry about money. In John's Gospel, Jesus asks, Where can they buy food for the people? He's the one who says it. John says it's a test for the disciples. And then a boy offers his food. Do you hear the differences in these two stories? At the end, in the first three Gospels, Jesus blesses the food and breaks it. They already have the food they already have that the disciples said, we have. And it becomes enough. Then the disciples themselves feed the people, not Jesus. He tells them to go feed them. He takes what they have, he blesses it, and then he tells them to go feed them in small groups. But in the Gospel of John, Jesus blesses the boys' lunch and it becomes enough. Then Jesus feeds the people without the disciples' help, really. This is important to how we think about things, okay? It matters. First of all, in the first three Gospels, the disciples noticing that the people need food, this means that they are beginning to see the world with the eyes of compassion that they need to see the world through. They are beginning to get it. These people need food. Okay. Jesus noticing that the people need food, saying that, it's a given, right? But the disciples saw it. Jesus tells the disciples to feed the people. The disciples bring what they have, and then Jesus blesses it and multiplies it, and then the disciples feed the people. Do you see how Mark, Matthew, and Luke are much more disciple-centered than the Gospel of John? The Gospel of John's version of the story is much more about Jesus and Jesus' miracle-working power. Jesus is the one who the boy offers the food to and then is fed. The disciples are not nearly as involved. All the disciples really do in the Gospel of John is get a test and bring the boys food and then collect the trash afterwards, okay, the extras afterwards. I think that matters. The first three Gospels are disciples and community centered. The Gospel of John makes it more about just Jesus. Look at this too, though. This part's kind of important, I think, too. In the first three Gospels, before the disciples feed the people, they're divided into smaller groups. I think that really matters. Here's the version from Luke 9:14-15. And he said to his disciples, have them sit down in groups of about 50 each. And this small group division is taught by Jesus. Break up into small groups and then feed each other. So they did and had them all sit down. In John's gospel, Jesus feeds the people himself in one large group. One big group. I had this image of Jesus standing up and saying, here's your food, right? This is John 6:10-11. Here's what it says. Jesus said, make the people sit down. Now there was a great deal of grass in the place, so they sat down, about 5,000 in all. Okay, so the disciples instruct them all to sit down and look at Jesus in the Gospel of John. Do you hear the story image? See the image? But in the Gospel of Mark, Matthew, and Luke, he divides them into smaller groups where they sit together in groups. These differences in these gospel stories matter, and I think they matter a lot. In Mark, Matthew, and Luke, Jesus teaches the disciples to feed the people in smaller groups using what they have. This is generosity in community. It's working together to make it happen. And in the first 70 years after Jesus' life on earth, the Jesus way people did just like this. They met in smaller groups. They cared for each other. They worked together rather than creating one big centralized organization with proper beliefs and all of that. They worked together in small groups and cared for each other. And that was the most effective way for them to live out the Jesus way in the first 70 years or more of Jesus' life on earth. Actually, it was longer than that, but we know this for at least the first 70 years. But by John's gospel in 90 or 100 after Jesus' death, the model was already at that point shifting to one big organization called church with one leader and one set of proper beliefs and practices. And everyone was to look at that one leader, and that one leader would feed them all. and the disciples had very little involvement. One big group and one leader. Do you see the institutional church model already emerging here in John's gospel? But that is not what Jesus taught in Mark, Matthew, and Luke. In Mark, Matthew, and Luke, Jesus taught small groups and disciple leadership and work together and figure it out. You do it. I've taught you how. Now go divide. Go create the small groups and you do it. You feed people. But by John's gospel, there's one central figure. And yes, it's Jesus in John's gospel. But do you see how the church has done this? Continually creating people that everyone is supposed to look at. I can tell you, I am super uncomfortable with this model. A lot. I'm uncomfortable with being the center of attention. I would much rather step back and enable you to do the good work of the kingdom. In fact, on Fridays now, in order to not be perceived as the leader of the whole thing, because sometimes I'm good at strategy and I get asked a lot of questions, I'm doing stuff in my office or in the annex next door quietly because you can do it. I'm not the decision maker. I'm uncomfortable with what the church has done by placing clergy as the most important person in the organization. I don't believe that. I believe the role of the clergy is to support you. Anyway, do you see what happens between the first three Gospels and the Gospel of John? It changes from small groups working together in community with just people, every people, to the strong leader who manages it all. I think I'm going to side with the Matthew and Mark and Luke version here. I think that's probably the more accurate version of the story. So look at this right here. Jesus feeds the 5,000. That just happens to be the heading that shows up in all of the NRSVUE versions of the story, when really it should say something different than that. In Mark, Matthew, and Luke, it really should say, with Jesus' help, the disciples feed the 5,000. That's a much better miracle, if you ask me. If in 3 of the 4 Gospels, the disciples actually feed the people in smaller groups, then why do the headings in all 4 Gospels say that Jesus feeds them? Who is supposed to feed people? And how? Is it supposed to be a big institutional organization church in which Jesus does all the work? How is it supposed to be? Here's what I think. We are supposed to feed the people. We are the followers of Jesus. And this is beautiful, amazing, and messy, messy work. I mean, fish, yuck. I want to tell you about something that happened on Friday night. And I hesitated to tell you this story because there's a part of it, I'll tell you why when I get there, that I worry a little bit about. But there was a group of people that came in on Friday night who wanted to learn about what we are at Matthew 25, okay? Spirit of Matthew 25 on Friday night. And we were busy Friday. We had a lot going on. We were trying to get as much candy out of the building as possible. We had green beans coming out of our absolute ears, and peppers, bell peppers. I mean, we were busy. Wendy and I were running the whole night, really, truly. Other people were running too. Oh yeah, and Shelf Stable Milk. We were busy. But these 3 women came in, and instead of just observing or going through the line just to see how it works, they wanted attention from somebody. And so without thinking, I said, they brought them to me, and I was like, nope, Tammy, I'm busy, frankly. And Tammy's really the leader of Fridays, and that's how it should be. That's how I want it to be. That's how we want it to be, okay? So Tammy ended up talking with these 3 women for a while. We've decided that in the future, we're going to ask people to make an appointment if they want our undivided attention, because she was busy. She was working the candy table, okay? We're busy. But Tammy took a break to talk with these three women. First of all, I found it very strange that these three women were willing to take up Tammy's time for the length of time that they did while we were serving the community. But the conversation I had with one of them kind of explains why that's the case. At one point, they were even blocking the line in their group as they were standing around. Tammy moved them to the side. Anyway, these three women talked about what they might want to do at their church. That's why they came. They were interested. And I was busy running candy, but by the end, one of the women was back further in the lobby and I ended up talking to her. It was kind of awkward. I had to introduce myself. I didn't really want to be involved, to be honest. And I just said, "Hi, I'm Diane. I'm the pastor here." And she went, "Oh." And then she proceeded to say some things that really, really bothered me. Okay. First of all, she kept telling me that what they want to do is all about Jesus, implying that what we were doing maybe wasn't all about Jesus. And then she talked about how this was a very messy thing that we were doing, a very messy thing. And she talked about how, yeah, all this food, I mean, oh, and the floor, ironically, because the carpet's coming up tomorrow, um, and this is really messy. And I was like offended. I was like, what? Why do you care? Of course it's messy. That's why we do this. I didn't say that. I just said, oh, okay. In my pastorly way. Okay. And she said, in our church, I don't think they could tolerate this kind of messy. I mean, and then she told me multiple times, and we have lots of money, she said. We have plenty of money. We have a lot of people that write checks, but I don't know if my church would do something that's this messy. And I was like, okay. And I basically said to her, well, you can see we've chosen what we prioritize here. We don't have money. In fact, we just barely make it every month. But we've clearly chosen our community over our carpet. In fact, this carpet's coming up tomorrow. But then she added a thought to that. And this is why I hesitated to tell you this story. I just want you to know I totally disagree with her. You have to know there are people who think like this, though. She said, and the people are messy. And I felt the hair on the back of my neck stand up like a cat or a dog that was getting mad because she was insulting the people. And she talked about how, yep, Lisa, she talked about how um, another organization she volunteered with, she actually was a part of walking alongside people to help them choose their food so that maybe they could make better choices for themselves, which was also rude. And then she said, and working with these messy people is exhausting. Yep, Katie, you're right. She said, working with these messy people is just exhausting. And I was thinking, lady, I don't think we have the same Jesus in mind. But what I said was, I'm sorry you feel that way. We love what we do. We're all messy. Isn't that what grace is about? She saw the look in her eye told me that she knew she made me kind of mad because I don't see it that way. What I see on Fridays and Tuesdays and second Sundays and an adult fellowship and the choir and the gathering and every group, what I see is a whole pile of messy, beautiful, amazing people who are doing the work of Jesus. Yeah, she's missing the point because the work of Jesus is messy. It's easier if we believe that it's all just up to Jesus, that one central figure. Or, as many churches do, they believe that all the work of Jesus is up to the pastor. It's easier to do that and then just blame the pastor when they don't do all the work you want them to do. We pray, we maybe share, yes, Mary. We pray, maybe share money with our church, and then we ask God to solve all the problems, and then we just wait. But if God were to manage it all, then we wouldn't need to. We wouldn't get to be involved in this work. We won't develop the communities together if we just sit and wait for Jesus to handle everything messy or clean it up so we don't have to get exhausted by it. Yeah, this lady frustrated me. She knew it too. She felt me. But I just kept thinking that's the best example I could possibly give. Jesus gets involved. He gets his hands dirty, and he asked his disciples to do the same. He said to the disciples, "You go feed them. And what you will learn," he didn't say this, but here's what I think. What you will learn from this experience is far more than just how to get people food. I want to share with you a story, a video that I saw, and it was from the Star Tribune in a social media post that they put out, because people are still studying and probably will continue to study what happened in Minneapolis when the ICE stuff was all at its height, at the absolute worst, in the way that people cared for each other. I want you to hear this video because I think it's exactly what Jesus was doing when he had said to the disciples, "You go feed them," and then they developed small groups. He told them to divide them in small groups. Listen to this.
You've probably heard about the Minnesotans who stood up to a federal immigration crackdown earlier this year. They marched in the cold, they guarded childcare centers, they delivered groceries to immigrants in hiding. But activists tell me that the most radical part of the resistance is the genuine relationships that grew out of the crisis. I want to talk to you about a Minneapolis woman named Jody Abramson. When she joined the resistance, she didn't know much about the experiences of new immigrants in her neighborhood. Jody agreed to carpool little kids to and from a nearby elementary school. And one little girl she started driving was a 9-year-old named Rosemary. Rosemary is just learning English, and Jody doesn't speak Spanish. So they do the best they can, with Jody's phone translating whenever they get stuck. But still, they built a relationship. Jody doesn't consider herself a revolutionary. She takes Rosemary to buy new shoes and clothing that fit her. She treats her to ice cream. When Rosemary initiates a prolonged hug, you could almost feel Jody's heart swell. She told me that after driving kids like Rosemary to school for just a week, it opened her eyes to all that has been happening in her own backyard. Several other families she got to know have since been deported or have self-deported back to Ecuador. Rosemary is now taking the bus again. Families are still afraid of ICE and worry if they can make ends meet. Jody says she's still going to be a part of Rosemary's life and help her family however she can. This type of caring isn't as detached or tidy as writing a check to your favorite charity. Being in a relationship can be messy and awkward, but it is radical, and it might be the most durable part.
How about that? I had already downloaded this video to show you today before that woman talked about how messy it was. How about that lady Jody? Developed a relationship. I want to tell you, when God's people are involved in love for all people, then love grows in community. Love will even regenerate season after season after season. The problem is the condescending attitudes, the hands off, you fix it, I'll write a check attitudes, frankly, they also regenerate. I think we got to get ahead, friends. I think we got to keep regenerating the community of love that recognizes that we're all messy. We all have stuff. And we need to work together to make this better in community. I'm so proud of this church for being willing to be messy and to get involved in that difficult work of loving our neighbor. I want to tell you that even though those 3 women came in Friday night and one of them really made me mad, and she knew it, there were also 3 women on Friday night who gave me a hug. People who I'd never met before. I don't know if I've ever seen them before, really, because I'm often running pretty hard on Fridays. or hiding, one of the two. 3 women gave me a hug and told me, thank you. You just have no idea how much this matters. You have no idea. We are so grateful for what you guys do here. Thank you. Isn't it interesting? I believe God provided that counterbalance on Friday. I could walk away being mad at one. Really, she knew it. And I could walk away feeling like our community gets it. We do too. And honestly, I would just encourage you to pray for this woman and her church, because she's missing that compassion that the disciples felt and that Jesus feels for people. She was missing the compassion. She had not experienced the love of Jesus in a way that changed her. I don't think so. So prayers, offering grace to her. Here's the thing though. You all know this. When we are tangibly involved in the work of God's kingdom, when we get it done, when we work together to get it done, we plant the seeds of love in community. We do good work that feeds people and cares for people. When we continually offer grace, we nurture the love that we share, and we teach the next generations to do the same thing. This is the call of all of the people who follow the way of Jesus. And I think this is what Jesus was doing in the gospel stories about feeding the 5,000. I know the Gospel of John tells it a different way much later, and I think they help change the pattern. But Mark, Matthew, and Luke, Jesus tells the disciples to go feed them, to break them into small groups, work together, and figure it out. And that is what I think the miracle is. Just like all this garlic that came up this year. Isn't it amazing? This is the regeneration. This is what we hold hope in even now, in this world and in this country. That if we will continue to care for each other and love each other, the relationships will grow, the community will flourish, and this will spread. And it will regenerate from season to season to season. So friends, I encourage you, as I do every single week, get involved. If you want to show up today and help us haul stuff around, get the pop machine out of the hallway without damaging it, because that might be the most important thing in the building. Ask me about that if you don't know what I'm talking about. It's so strange. But you got to get everything moved out and get this floor up and make it easier to clean and to work with and everything. Because we're prioritizing loving our neighbor over whether or not our church looks super messy all the time. It will probably look messy also with the cement floor just because it's cement. We are prioritizing loving our neighbor over everything else. So I encourage you, get involved. And if not here, get involved somewhere. Keep praying that we will learn to see each other with eyes of grace, especially those who claim to follow Jesus. That we will recognize that we're all messy, and being involved in the messy work is the honor of following Jesus, because that's what really causes life to flourish. Take care, everybody. Watch the announcement video. It'll give you a lot of ideas about how you can be involved. I look forward to hearing from you soon. Take care.